Shocking morning prayer, Lord, walk with me at 3 a.m. Haunting truths revealed. The clock struck 3. An eerie stillness blanketed the small town of Willow Creek. It was a time when the world held its breath, caught between dreams and the chilling whispers of night. In that hushed hour, there was a flicker of candlelight that cut through the darkness, illuminating a solitary figure kneeling on the wooden floorboards. Sarah's heart pounded like a drum, each thump echoing in the silence. She could feel the weight of 1,000 eyes boring into her, as if the spirits of lost souls were watching closely, urging her to confront the shadows. Just the night before, she had stumbled across an old book buried deep in her grandmother's attic. The cover was cracked, hinting at years of neglect, but what lay within was captivating. It spoke of a forgotten ritual, a prayer said to reveal hidden truths at the dead of night. The words danced on the pages, pulling her in with a magnetic force. Lord, walk with me, it said, and unlock the secrets buried in the depths of my heart. Those very words echoed in her mind as she lit the candle, the only source of light in her dim room. Something about it felt wrong. It sent shivers down her spine. Was it really a prayer, or was it a spell? The shadows flickered, morphing into jagged shapes that clawed at the corners of her vision. She took a deep breath, trying to calm the tightness in her chest. But as she whispered the words, a low groan reverberated through the walls, vibrating like a heartbeat. The hair on the back of her neck stood up. Was it the house settling, or something more sinister? Suddenly, the candle flickered violently as if a gust of wind swept through the room, but all the windows were shut tight. Sarah's stomach knotted with fear. This wasn't just prayer, it was an invocation. Had she summoned something unearthly? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the last word of the prayer slipped from her lips, an icy breeze swept through the room, extinguishing the flickering flame. Dark clouds seemed to swirl around her, almost tangible, as if pulling her under. She felt a surge of adrenaline. Was this the truth she sought, or a trap set by unseen forces? The silence grew deafening, but beneath it, she could hear whispers soft and insistent. Were they warnings, or invitations? In that moment, Sarah knew she had crossed a line. A deep dread filled her, and she could feel herself teetering on the brink of something beyond comprehension. What had she awakened in the still of the night? And was it too late to close the door she had just opened? The night loomed heavy, as questions spiraled in her mind, leaving everything unresolved, begging for answers. A chill settled in the room. Shadows twisted and coiled around her as if they were alive. Sarah's pulse raced, each beat a chaotic reminder of the terror that now filled her space. The whispers crescendoed, their tone shifting from soft invitations to urgent pleas. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to block it all out, but the darkness tightened around her like a vice, suffocating her resolve. "Is anyone there?" she called out, her voice barely above a whisper, shaken yet desperate. A deep rumble followed her question, an echo that ricocheted off the walls. The air turned cold, and she felt a presence, something powerful yet unnerving, standing just beyond her reach. Without warning, the bedroom door creaked open, revealing damp, blackened wood beneath the dim overhead light. A figure loomed in the threshold, shrouded in darkness. Sarah's breath hitched, panic clawing at her throat. Was this what she had summoned? "Who are you?" she cried, frustration boiling over into fear. The figure stepped forward, the shadows swirling away like mist. It was a woman, spectre-like but unmistakably familiar, her grandmother. "Sarah," the voice drifted like smoke through the air, a haunting blend of love and sorrow. "I warned you about the powers that lie within that prayer." "Grandma?" Sarah staggered to her feet, disbelief crashing over her. This was impossible. Her grandmother had passed years ago, yet here she stood, her translucent form flickering like the dying candlelight. "What do you mean?" "The truth you seek can shatter your very soul," the apparition whispered, her eyes filled with a depth of sorrow. "You invoked something ancient, something that was meant to stay hidden. You have to undo this, before the darkness claims you." Panic sparked in Sarah's chest. "How? What do I do?" "Close your eyes," her grandmother instructed, gentle yet urgent. "Speak the words to close the door you opened. You must act quickly, or it will be too late." The whispers grew louder, angry and chaotic, as if the very fabric of the night fought against her. Sarah focused on her grandmother's face, grounding herself in the familiarity of love, stepping forward to battle her fear. "Please help me," Sarah begged, her voice trembling, the courage she had summoned slipping away like sand through her fingers. "Believe in the light," her grandmother said, and for an instant, the room brightened, the shadows recoiling as if scorched. "Now, say it. Say the words to close it." Taking a deep breath despite the overwhelming dread, Sarah closed her eyes, recalling the incantation. Her voice steadied as she whispered, "Lord, walk with me," and just then, a sharp gust of wind swept through, shaking the very foundations of the house. The whispers crescendoed into a shriek, the darkness swirling furiously. "Don't stop. Finish it." Her grandmother's figure cried, her voice strained and urgent, as if it were the last thread keeping them tethered to safety, but before Sarah could continue, a chilling scream echoed through the room, cutting through the air like a knife. The shadows lunged, enveloping her in a cold embrace, dragging her down into a void of despair. Her eyes flew open as fear shattered her concentration. "No!" she shouted, feeling herself being pulled away from the fleeting vision of her grandmother. Suddenly, the walls began to vibrate, the entire house groaning under an unseen weight. Desperation clawed at her throat. What had she unleashed? As the shadows closed in, Sarah understood one thing: the true darkness she had awakened was far beyond her comprehension, and it wasn't he about to let go without a fight. Now, with the weight of her ancestors upon her and a powerful force at her back, there was only one question left. Would she find the courage to face it, or would she succumb to the very darkness she sought to unveil? The room spun violently, shadows clawing at Sarah's mind. The air thickened like fog, heavy with the remnants of despair. She struggled against the unseen force, gasping for breath, her heart pounding like a drum in a frantic parade. "I can't let this happen," she screamed, the words torn from her throat. In that moment, as the walls quivered and darkness surged, she felt a surge of defiance. The energy of her grandmother's presence ignited something within her. A flicker of hope rose like a match against the night. "No more!" she shouted, remembering the warmth of love that once filled this very space, but the shadows recoiled at her strength, morphing into dark tendrils that wrapped around her wrists and ankles, pulling her deeper into the abyss. The whispers morphed again, rising in pitch and ferocity, becoming a cacophony of anguish. "Stop! Let me go!" she howled, thrashing against the restraints. "I refuse to be your pawn." With desperation fueling her will, Sarah summoned the memory of her grandmother's comforting embrace. She could feel it, a gentle squeeze that whispered, "You are stronger than you know." She closed her eyes, focusing on that feeling, channeling everything she had into the next words she would utter. "Lord, walk with me." As the incantation fell from her lips, a fissure of light crackled into existence, slicing through the grey murkiness. The shadows screeched, a mix of rage and fear that resonated through the house. She could feel a shift, a tug-of-war between light and dark. "Keep going. You cannot falter." Her grandmother's voice urged again, echoing around her in a wisp that felt like a lifeline. Sarah clenched her fists, the warmth of determination flooding her bones. "I will not let you take me." The next words surged forth, almost as if they were pulling her upward, a struggle to break free. "Guide my heart." The shadows coiled tighter, cutting off her breath, blurring the world around her, but she pushed through. "And shield my spirit." With the final declaration, the light exploded outward, consuming the room in a brilliance that burned hot against the cold darkness. The shadows screamed, twisting and flailing as if caught in a tempest. Shadows that had once claimed her grandmother's voice became lost in the brilliance of light. Suddenly, a deafening silence blanketed the room. The shadows evaporated, leaving behind a shimmering haze of tranquility. Sarah gasped for breath, her chest heaving as she stumbled forward, collapsing onto the wooden floor. What she saw next set her heart racing anew. In the center of her room, where the darkness had coiled tighter than ever, lay a small object glistening under the aftermath glow of light. It was a brass key, old and worn, marked with strange symbols that pulsed softly, as if alive. As she reached out to touch it, a new wave of whispers flowed around her, gentle but insistent. "The door awaits," they murmured, a promise and a warning all at once. Fear tinged her excitement. "What door?" she whispered, her thoughts racing that a chill ran down her spine, and realization settled heavy in her gut. This key was not just an artifact, it was a tether to what she had invoked. Just as her fingers brushed the cool metal, the air shimmered with a sudden new energy, and the temperature dropped sharply. In the corner of her eye, shadows began to stir again, thicker this time, forming into a figure tall and menacing. Sarah froze, heart thundering once more as the darkness began to solidify. The whispers crescendoed into frantic cries, echoing her mounting dread. They were no longer just a warning, this was an arrival. "Sarah," a voice hissed, and it was not her grandmother's. Terror roared within her as she snatched the key, clutching it like a lifeline, knowing the true battle had just begun. What door would she find if she dared to turn the key? The figure materialized, its outline obscured by swirling shadows, a grotesque mockery of what it once might have been. Sarah's mouth went dry, and her fingers gripped the key tighter. A cold dread settled in her bones, mixing with the remnants of her courage. "What do you want?" she stammered, adrenaline painting her words with fear. "Do you really believe you can escape?" The figure sneered, its voice a chilling melody that echoed through the silence left by the vanquished shadows. "You invite darkness into your heart, and it will always find you." "Not if I can help it," Sarah shouted back, the defiance sparking a flicker of light within her. She remembered the warmth of love she still yearned for and fought against the icy grip of despair. But the figure stepped closer, shifting just enough for Sarah to see the void where its eyes should be. She swallowed hard, her instincts screaming to run, but she stood her ground. "I'll never be your pawn." With those words, the shadows began to writhe violently, reacting to her defiance. They lunged toward her from the corners of the room, eager to draw her into their cavernous depths. She felt a pull, as though the very air around her conspired to drag her back down into the hollow embrace of the darkness. The key in her hand felt hotter, as if it sensed the rising tension. "The door awaits," the whispers echoed again, a seductive promise hovering on the edge of her consciousness. What door? She dared to wonder, but before she could explore the thought further, the figure lunged forward. "Foolish girl!" it hissed, rushing at her with fingers like claws. Time seemed to jerk as Sarah instinctively swung the brass key like a weapon, aiming it toward the creature. The moment it made contact, light exploded from the key, illuminating the entire room in a blinding brilliance. The figure screeched, a horrible sound that reverberated through her mind, but she didn't stop. She pressed forward, focusing all her energy, fear melding with determination. "Leave me alone. I am not afraid of you." With every ounce of strength, she twisted the key, anticipating a door to open, a release from the grip of this nightmare. The air shimmered, and like magic, a door appeared, a magnificent portal, framed in swirling light that beckoned her to step through, but the figure lurched back, its form becoming liquid shadows, merging into a nightmarish whirlpool. "You cannot turn and run, Sarah. You belong to us," it cried, its voice now mingling with hissing whispers that reverberated in her ears. Sarah hesitated just for a second, but the growing darkness around her felt consuming, threatening to swallow her whole. "I will not be your puppet," she shouted again, infusing her voice with enough conviction to drown out the chaos. Taking a deep breath, she turned towards the glowing door, knowing it was both a risk and her only escape. As she made the leap towards the shimmering frame, the world behind her exploded in a cacophony of rage. "You won to escape." The voice screamed, an unholy promise riding the waves of its fury. The moment she crossed the threshold, a rush of energy swept over her, pulling her into a sanctuary where shadows could not follow. But as soon as she was safe, a new realization snaked into her heart: she wasn't out of danger yet. The moment had changed, but the fight was far from over. What if turning the key opened something worse? She whispered, dread creeping back in like a slithering snake. As the light around her dimmed, Sarah stood on the precipice of a new truth, knowing she had just scratched the surface. In the silence that followed, the gentle whispers returned, but they felt different, a warning pulse coursing through her veins. "You have awakened shadows and now they are hungry." What would she find in the next chapter? What fresh horrors awaited her? She found herself standing on a cold, stone floor, the remnants of the light fading into muted shades of gray. The air was thick and stagnant, like the aftermath of a tempest. As her heart raced, Sarah scanned her surroundings. She was inside a vast chamber, far removed from the haunted familiarity of her previous space. Walls adorned with grotesque carving seemed to ripple under her gaze, depicting fierce battles between light and shadows. "Where am I?" she murmured, fear punctuating her voice. Her thoughts raced like wildfire. The whispers had become louder, an unsettling mix of familiar voices, people lost to darkness, loved ones she had known. "Sarah," they called, stretching her name into echoes that bounced off the walls, wrapping her in a suffocating embrace. The key tightened in her grip, seemingly alive as it pulsed with heat, urging her to act. Half-formed memories flickered within her mind like the dying embers of a forgotten fire. "I can't be here," she breathed, stepping forward cautiously, eyeing the flickering shadows darting just beyond her periphery. Just then, a sudden crack echoed through the chamber. A shadow, broader and taller than her, emerged from the darkness. Its eyes, hollow and hungry, locked onto hers. A chill snaked down her spine as she realized it wasn't just an apparition, it was something more, something that hadn't yet given up on its claim. "You thought you could escape?" the figure hissed, voice dripping with malice. "This is where shadows thrive, where they grow strong. You have awakened what should have remained dormant." The air grew heavy, and a wave of despair washed over her. "I can't let this happen," she shouted, knowing that her will was the only weapon she had left. Behind the creature, Sarah noticed a flickering light pulsating with a strange rhythm, drawing her in. It seemed alive, radiant, almost whispering her name, promising safety. Was it truly a beacon of hope, or another trap? "Do not follow the light," the figure shrieked, desperation crackling in its tone. "It will lead you deeper into darkness. You could lose everything you cherish." Sarah hesitated, the conflict tearing at her soul. Every person she had loved flickered through her mind, each face twisted with loss, each voice calling for her, urging her to stay. But the warmth from the light beckoned, urging her to escape, to fight back. "Those who are lost will always be lost if you remain," it taunted, stepping forward with a menacing swagger. "They only exist because you draw breath. Choose wisely." With raw determination, Sarah lunged toward the light, heart racing with both fear and hope. She could feel the shadows clawing at her heels, seeking to drag her back into the uncertainty. The moment she reached for the glow, pain seared through her hand, a backlash of dark energy that made her gasp. She fought against it, recalling every reason she wanted to survive, to heal. But the shadows laughed, a cacophony of hisses filling her mind with doubt. "Fool! You think you can save them?" With an effort that felt monumental, Sarah closed her eyes, digging deep into the flame of her spirit. "I will save them," she cried, the words spilling from her lips like a prayer. The light surged, breaking through the shadows around her. But just as she felt the warmth envelop her, the chamber erupted into chaos. The voices of the lost grew deafening, the shadows howling with rage. "You will pay for this transgression." As the energy swirled around her, mixing hope with despair, a sudden truth shattered in her mind, a realization that gripped her heart with a vice-like grip. What if to save them, I had to sacrifice myself? A stillness descended, as if time paused to allow the weight of her choice to sink in. "Welcome to the heart of darkness," the shadowed figure whispered, a chilling promise that wrapped around her like chains. What sacrifices awaited Sarah in the light? What truths lay hidden beyond the veil? What she didn't realize was that freedom might come with a price she was not yet prepared to pay. The energy around Sarah crackled and writhed like a serpent, alive with raw despair. The shadows lunged at the edges of her vision, their dark whispers curling around her mind. "You don't belong here. You never did." Each syllable struck her like ice water, paralyzing her resolve one heartbeat at a time, but the light, it was still there, pulsing, inviting her. Standing on the precipice between fear and courage, Sarah inhaled sharply, steeling herself against the relentless onslaught of the shadows. She thought back to all the faces she loved, moments shared, laughter, warmth. And despite the suffocating darkness, a tiny ember sparked within her, igniting her will to move toward the light once more. "Get away from me!" she shouted defiantly, extending her hand toward the warmth that promised not just safety, but deliverance. As if responding to her call, the light amplified, cascading across the chamber with a color so vibrant it felt like a living entity. But just as her fingers brushed the luminosity, the shadowed figure roared in fury, an inhuman sound that rattled the very stones around her. "You can't escape. You are tied to this place. You are tied to them." Echoes of her name filled the chamber, a cruel mockery of the deepest anguish she thought she had buried. The heat of the light felt intoxicating, washing over her like sunlight after a storm. For a brief moment, not even the terrible grasp of despair could hold her back. Inspiration surged through her, filling the void the darkness had carved in her heart. "If I have to fight, then let it be with everything I have." She thrust her other hand into the light, absorbing its essence. It fused with her, pulling her closer, wrapping itself around her like a protective shroud. The shadows recoiled, shrieking as the light burned them away. Sarah felt strength swell within her, pushing back the shadows that sought to devour her. But beneath this newfound courage lay an unsettling truth. Each step she took toward the light sent waves of anguish through her body, as if the price of liberation was the very fabric of her soul unraveling. "Will you really sacrifice it all?" The figure's voice coiled ominously around her, slipping into her thoughts with sinister precision. "They may be lost, but so will you. At what cost will your redemption come?" A flash of doubt flickered across Sarah's mind. Could she truly save those she loved without losing herself? Would her sacrifice be in vain? Yet, any hesitation was lost amidst the yowls of the shadows, ramping up their assault, desperate to drown out her hope. "I will find a way," she shouted again, scrambling toward the heart of the light as pulsations intensified, forcing the shadows back, their wails filling her ears with a haunting symphony of despair. Suddenly, an abrupt shift jolted through the chamber. A crack in the stone floor shattered open beneath her, revealing an abyss that groaned hungrily. Rock and debris spiraled down into the void, and the shadows seized the opportunity, launching themselves forward. "No!" Sarah screamed, her heart racing. She fought to maintain her grip on the light, feeling the weight of her decision nearing its climax. "I won't let this happen." But the shadows surged, hungry and relentless, seeking to drag her into the gnashing darkness. Shards of pain lanced through her hand where the key still pulsed, anchoring her in its heat. Just then, within the chaos, a realization struck like an arrow to her heart. What if the key was the only way to break the cycle? What if I used it? She thought, panic turning into resolve as she reached for the key with her free hand. Could it sever the ties constraining her? Just as she made her decision, she felt the ground tremble beneath her. What had once felt like a mere decision was now a flashpoint for everything she had ever known. "Will you?" The shadowed figure loomed larger, its eyes glinting with dark excitement. "Will you brave the unknown? The heart of darkness may offer an answer, but it won't come without a price." In that moment, the light dimmed slightly, uncertainty. rippling through her soul. What answer will await Sarah beyond her unwavering choice? Would she emerge restored, or lose herself entirely in the process? As the shadows lunged closer, their twisted forms stretching like claws toward her, Sarah felt the oppressive weight of dread bearing down on her soul. She could hear the echoes of their wicked laughter mocking, jeering, a cacophony of dismissive chaos that threatened to overwhelm her. Heart thudding in her chest, she clasped the warm key tightly, its heat pulsing in sync with her racing heartbeat. "Do it!" The shadowed figure screamed, the voice now a jagged knife that cut through the chaos. "Use it. But know this: a sacrifice demands blood, not just bravery." With that warning echoing in her mind, Sarah hesitated. Would this plunge her deeper into the abyss? Would activating the key release horrors she couldn't even fathom? Was she truly ready to pay the ultimate price? But then she thought of her family, her friends, their faces flickering in her memory like fireflies against the darkness. They were waiting for her. No more hesitation. The light beckoned, and the shadows swarmed like hungry locusts, trying to bite into her resolve. Summoning her strength, Sarah plunged the key into the very core of the swirling light, a frantic prayer flung toward the heavens. "Help me!" she cried, voice laced with desperation. As the key connected, a blinding explosion of radiance erupted from the core, cascading through the chamber with the brilliance of a star. The shadows screeched, reeling back as if physically struck. In that moment of clarity, Sarah saw everything: fragments of light and dark intertwining, memories she had long shunned flashing before her. But within the brilliant explosion, she also felt the pull of the abyss. It was a terrible reminder of her past, a dark pit filled with sorrow she had tried to escape. "No!" she gasped, grasping at the light, struggling to keep herself anchored. Then, as quickly as it had exploded, the light began to retract, swirling away from her grasp as if it too feared the looming shadows. Sarah's heart sank. Could the brightness abandon her now? Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a hauntingly familiar silhouette that momentarily stunned her. "Sarah," it whispered, and a chill shot down her spine. It was her brother, his expression twisted between fear and longing, eyes pleading for understanding. "You have the power to change everything, but at what cost?" "Jake, is that you?" she stammered, heart racing. The shadows flickered, listening, their menacing growls fading momentarily in the presence of his image. But was this another trick of the dark? "Trust yourself," he urged, his silhouette flickering like a candle's flame threatened by the bitter wind. "You are stronger than you think. You need to let go of the past to bring us back." Tears prickled at the corners of Sarah's eyes. "How can I?" she cried. "How do I save you without losing myself?" The shadows surged again, hungry for her despair, the cacophony of wails rising to a maddening crescendo. Through the noise, Sarah felt the weight of her brother's gaze. "Choose, Sarah!" he shouted as the shadows wrapped around him, pulling him deeper into the void. "Choose now!" With a last, frenzied heart twist, Sarah yanked the key from the light, her grip tightening around its warmth despite the painful bursts of panic. Would this choice sever the bonds that linked him to the darkness? Before she could falter further, she shouted, "I choose love. I choose hope." The shadows recoiled momentarily, their grip faltering, but the pulse of anguish surged through her body tenfold. As the last word escaped her lips, the light exploded once more, this time engulfing her completely, blinding her. In that luminous haze, Sarah felt her form stretching. Then, something deep within her broke what awaited Sarah as the brilliant light cocooned her. Was liberation finally within reach, or would it rain chaos upon her with dire consequences? As the light engulfed her, Sarah's senses swirled in a dizzying chaos. For a heartbeat, it felt as though every fiber of her being was woven into the very fabric of the universe. She could see colors she had never known existed, brilliant, vibrant hues that danced and pulsed like a heartbeat of their own. But just as quickly, shadows clawed at the edges of this warmth, tugging at her, whispering temptations of despair. "Waking up is painful, Sarah," the shadows crooned, voices thick with malice. What if this is a lie? What if you're trading what you know for the unknown? Their words slithered under her skin, coiling around her heart, threatening to seep into her psyche. Still, she pressed against the darkness, feeling the heat of the key still clutched in her hand, its warmth a tether grounding her amid the chaos. "Jake," she called so desperately into the shimmering void. "Please, where are you?" The light flickered as if in response, a pause pregnant with hope, but the shadows took that moment to surge back, howling with almost human fury. Their forms warped and twisted, driving deeper daggers of anguish into her resolve. "Sacrifice for sacrifice," they snarled. "What will you give to rescue your brother?" The light around her dimmed, and she found herself standing at the precipice of a chasm, where darkness consumed everything in its path. From the depths, she could hear cries, echoes of torment that pierced her heart. Each sound pulled her closer, a beckoning that twisted her stomach into knots. Were those the voices of her friends? Of her family? Time is running out. The shadows taunted, baring sharp teeth that dripped with despair, nearly tainting the light she fought to hold on to. Instinctively, Sarah took a step backward, but the shadows lunged forward, eager to fill the void she created. She felt the air thicken with every unwanted breath, an oppressive reminder of the weight of her choices, but then she remembered Jake's face, his eyes, pleading for her to confront the darkness, to fight not just for him but for herself. "I won't let you take me," she shouted. In that moment, she hurled the key toward the swirling light, a final gesture of defiance. A sound like shattering glass reverberated through the space as the key connected, exploding the radiant sphere into a million glittering shards. The light pierced through the darkness, illuminating everything in a blindingly beautiful way. But the shadows, enraged, lashed out, their echoing wails reverberating like thunder. Suddenly, Sarah felt herself being drawn back into the depths of despair, a violent pull dragging at her spirit. The remnants of the shattered light wrapped themselves around her, intertwining like cherished memories. Each spark felt like a pop of warmth, triggering a surge of emotion that swamped her heart. "Let go," the shadows roared, but she gritted her teeth. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she braced herself against the biting cold. "I choose to face my past. I choose to remember." The air crackled and hummed, vibrating with an energy she had never known. With every ounce of will, she pushed back against the darkness, and suddenly, memories poured forth, her brother laughing, family dinners, their last words together. And then she saw it, a flicker within the shadows, a glimpse of Jake breaking through the murk. The revelation struck her like a lightning bolt, igniting something deep within. "You're here!" she cried, departing from the pain, desperation shifting into determination, but just as she reached for him, a powerful force struck her, the shadows coiling tighter, spinning their desperate web of despair. They hissed with fury, intent on pulling her back into the inky blackness. "Will you save him, or will you surrender?" they chanted, their twisted forms swirling like a tornado, fueled by her fear, her anger, her uncertainty. In that heart-stopping moment, everything froze. Would she break free? Would she grasp onto the hope of salvation for both her brother and herself? Or would she become another lost soul clawing at the edges of the abyss, and just? Then, the air shifted, as if her choice had created a ripple through the universe. "I will not give in," she finally screamed, defiance resonating through her very core. But even as the shadows writhed in fury, she sensed a new presence stirring within the light, a deeper truth, a darker secret. What awaited her at the crossroads of uncertainty? Was the cost of salvation higher than she ever imagined? The moment Sarah's voice rang out, the shadows recoiled slightly, their sinister forms flickering as if testing the strength of her resolve. A moment of silence hung heavy in the air, thick like fog, before the darkness surged once more, blacker than before, intent on overwhelming her. The colors around her twisted and blurred, and a pulse of energy shot through her, igniting her fear. "Jake!" she cried again, desperation cracking her voice. She could feel his presence, tangible yet just out of reach, a haunting echo of the bond they once shared. "You're nothing without him." The shadows taunted, their voices a chorus of malevolence. Remember what he did, how he left you. Every word was a barbed arrow aimed straight at her heart. Pain cut deep into her memories, dark reminders of moments when Jake had chosen his path, leaving her in the wake of his decisions. Anger churned within her, but mixed with an undercurrent of guilt that threatened to drown her. No. She shut her eyes tightly, refusing to succumb to the bitter whispers. You don't get to control my emotions. With that thought planted firmly in her heart, she opened her eyes determined, defiant. The shattered light surrounding her pulsed with life, illuminating even the darkest corners of her mind. Each flicker of brilliance felt like a promise, a reminder of the love that had always existed between them. At that moment, she made a choice. Not just to fight for Jake, but to reclaim herself, her power, her past. One shard of light broke free from the chaos, streaking towards her. It formed into a brilliant shape, a butterfly shimmering with gold and silver. It danced in the air, drawing her closer. What are you? She whispered, entranced, tears streaming down her cheeks. I am your truth, it replied, its voice gentle yet firm, as if they'd known each other for lifetimes. Embrace the light within you. By recognizing your fears, you conquer them. The shadows roared in anger, a tumultuous storm of swirling darkness, their crass teeth snapping close. But Sarah stood tall, a sense of calm enveloping her, echoing the vibrant pulse of the butterfly. She could feel it inside her, a faint flicker of hope growing fiercely. I won't hide any longer. She shouted, her voice cutting through the roar. I choose to remember all of it, the pain, the joy. I embrace both. The shadows shrieked as the butterfly flared brighter, absorbing the darkness around her. Light shot forth, a beam cleaving the swirling chaos, illuminating everything in a golden glow. Jake's voice echoed back through the torrents. Sarah. Just hold on. Her heart raced. Jake. Suddenly, the world twisted and turned. With a powerful force, she was ripped from the heart of the chaos. The bright light enveloped her, guiding her through the vortex. She halted, suspended in an ethereal space between light and shadow. She caught sight of images upon the walls of this strange void, fragments of memories, each flickering truth revealing what had been hidden within. Some were blissful, others tore at her soul. There was her childhood, laughter ringing through sunlit days, and then darker moments, arguments, harsh words. You don't have to face this alone. The butterfly urged her. Embrace them all. In that instant, she released a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Something deep inside her shifted, a monumental weight lifted. The shadows retreated slightly, as if recoiling from her clarity, but just as she began to step forward, the air around her crackled ominously. With a chilling whisper, the shadows mingled with the light, distorting into figures that formed before her, ghostly images of people she had lost. Friends, family, even Jake, but their faces were twisted by grief. What do you want? She yelled, heart pounding against her ribs. Do you really believe you can save him? They hissed in unison, stretching their arms toward her, pulling her further into the influence of despair. Amid their haunting lament, Sarah's throat clenched. Would accepting this reality mean she'd lose everything she fought for? How much truth could she bear before it consumed her entirely? As the shadows pressed in on her once more, she felt the brightness of the butterfly grow stronger, ready to embrace her madness. Could she truly accept the pain and love her brother had left behind, or would the shadows suffocate all hope left within her? The choice loomed heavy as darkness closed in, each breath pulling her deeper into uncertainty. Could she face the truth of the past, or would the truths of the shadows swallow her whole like a thunderclap in the silent night? In this dance between light and shadow, what lay ahead remained an uncharted path, but the decisions she made in this very moment would alter the fabric of her fate forever. The echoes of loss resonated within Sarah as she stood at the edge of despair. The shadows twisted and writhed, their camouflaged fingers reaching out to claw at her heart. You can't fight us forever. They hissed, their voices dripping with venom. You are bound to the darkness you fear. But as she felt the cold seep into her bones, a sudden warmth radiated through her. The butterfly her truth suddenly pulsed with vibrant light, urging her to step forward. Embrace your memories, it whispered, for they hold the key to your strength. She took a deep breath and stepped into the swirling chaos of shadows and light. I remember. She shouted, voice steady and bold. I remember the laughter, the warmth, the love that existed even in pain. I take ownership of it all. With those words, she felt a surge of power swelling within her, like a rising tide that pushed against the relentless pull of darkness. Images flooded her mind: Jake laughing at a goofy movie, their last family dinner, the sound of her mother's soothing voice. Joy and grief intertwined, revitalizing her spirit. The shadows recoiled, snarling in pain as if her memories inflicted wounds upon them. You think these past moments can save you? They will only bind you deeper. A monstrous voice thundered, but Sarah pressed on, undeterred. I will not be defined by fear. She yelled, her heart racing with new purpose. I won't let you dictate my past or my future. With her arms stretched wide, she beckoned the memories like a storm, each one infusing her with courage. The laughter pooled in her heart, mixing with the sorrow, and combined with the light around her, they created a radiance that shimmered vibrantly. The butterfly spiraled around her, amplifying her emergence. Transform the darkness into light, Sarah. It sang as it grew into a blazing ball of energy, and then she saw Jake's figure again, wavering in the shadows, torn between worlds. Sarah! He called, desperation coloring his voice. You can't sacrifice everything. Choose wisely. But his reassuring words rang like echoes of hope, not chains of despair. I won't lose you. She screamed, tears blurring her vision. Not now, not ever. The swelling light around her surged, twisting into a protective cocoon. The shadows hissed with fury, their forms twisting into grotesque figures. You think you can have them both, your love and your freedom? They screeched, moving in for the final attack. But Sarah was ready. No. I choose both. She shouted, every syllable fueled by the essence of her resolve. Stepping into the heart of the light, she reached for the shimmering vortex that surrounded her, weaving every joyous and painful memory into a tapestry of strength. The shadows screamed as they were engulfed in this radiant energy, their shrieks of rage cutting through the din, and in that blinding moment, everything shattered. Light exploded, sending shockwaves rippling through the abyss. The air crackled, illuminating every dark corner, breaking the spell of their shadows. The ghostly figures of her family evaporated into sparkles, the warmth of forgiven memories wrapping around her like a blanket. With one final breath, she pressed into the gleaming vortex, body and spirit intertwining as she surrendered to the brilliance. I will not be defeated, she vowed, feeling the love she had fought to reclaim flow through her again. As the chaotic clash of light and dark began to settle, Sarah found herself in an open field, sunlight flooding her senses. She stood alone, but it felt different, lighter. The debilitating hold of shadows had receded, their whispers silenced. She felt her heart racing with exhilaration. Sarah! She heard a voice call, and there he was, her brother Jake, standing at the edge of the field, bathed in warmth. Their eyes locked. I'm here. She shouted. As she ran toward him, every step propelled by the essence of their memories, she felt free not just from the shadows but from the shackles of guilt and regret that had once bound her. Together, we can face anything, she declared, embracing him as they each poured their energy into the bond they shared. We're unstoppable now. And in that embrace, a light ignited, the promise of renewal and hope flooding the air around them. They had faced the darkness together, and together they had risen, bound not by despair, but by love and resilience. As the sun set gently behind them, casting a vibrant glow over the horizon, Sarah understood that true freedom lay in embracing every part of herself. The journey wasn't over, but as they faced tomorrow, arm in arm, she felt empowered. No chains could hold them back. It was done. The darkness had been conquered. Sarah had reclaimed her truth, and with it, the prospect of a future filled with infinite potential awaited her. Now, while you're still feeling the rush of this conclusion, remember this is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now so you won't miss the next exclusive stories that are coming up. Smash that like button right now. Every click helps feed the algorithm and support this channel. And flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. What do you think Sarah will do next? Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this powerful conclusion. Let us keep this community growing strong.